and gentlemen, the books is in. The books are in. Yep. They in. They're here. ETM Hotel, running Shawn. Welcome to Peace. My name is Shawn. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to Science with Shawn. Today, I just want to catch everybody up on the latest and greatest news in the scientific community regarding COVID-19. The description to the actual video and the stream is actually in chat. This was actually recorded today. So we need to be up on what the scientists and things are actually saying. This is actually a free video on podcast, so we do have the right to actually break down this particular video from JAMA, and we're going to get into it. They're going to discuss the latest news on Pfizer and BioNTech and Moderna vaccines, the data, the weekends of EUA, designation with Pfizer and BioNTech, and the process for future full licensure and post-marketing safety surveillance. We'll be talking about we'll hear from Dr. Marks direct, the U.S. FDA Center of Biologics Evaluation and Research, Dr. Hahn as the Commissioner of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. So we have two key people a part of this particular conversation that are, bringing us the news. So without further ado, I'm gonna ask y'all to like the show, share the show, tell a friend or tell a friend, get everybody in this joint. I know it's kind of all of a sudden and it's late night, and you know how I do. I pop up, and we're gonna get into this bill. Give me a second, and I'm gonna get this thing started. I'm actually trying to share. Hopefully everybody having a good evening. It is Monday. I know y'all probably tired. I know some people tired, ain't paying attention to nothing. But I'm up and I'm at it, so let's crack it. I don't know if I'm gonna be joined by anybody. If I am, though, they already know how to come in.
Hello and welcome to Conversations with Dr. Bachner. Once again, it is Howard Bachner, Editor-in-Chief of JAMA. And I'm thrilled. I'm here with Steve Hahn, who's the Commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration, and Peter Marks. Peter's a Director of the Center for Biologic Evaluation and Research, CBER, who's been much in the news because his center is responsible for assuring the safety and effectiveness of biological products, including vaccines. Steve, what's the last 2 weeks been like for you?
So it's been actually a very positive time. We made a promise, Howard. I spoke to you about this several months ago. We made a promise to American people, to American doctors, that we would follow a process led by the science and the data, that we would do a thorough review, and we would uphold the gold standard that FDA is with respect to safety and effectiveness of vaccines and medical products, including transparency, which I think everyone saw last week with the Vaccine-Related Biologics Advisory Committee. So to me, we kept that promise to the American people. Dr. Marks' team did an amazing job, heroic job, reviewing a complex set of data and really getting it out there and having a very robust discussion, and then moving quickly to issue the emergency use authorization. So there's been pressure, no question about it, pressure of the moment. The fact that we have 3,000 plus people dying every day, it's a tragedy. But our teams responded, Peter responded, and we stood by the American people, and we followed the data and the science, and I'm incredibly proud of the agency for that.
Steve, I want to personally congratulate you. I know you made that pledge on this conversation almost 2 months ago, and you honored it. And I'm sure it was not easy. And I just want to thank you. Personally, I want to thank you. And on behalf of the scientific community, I want to thank you. So, Peter, how big was the application and how many people worked on looking at the data?
Yeah, so, I'm going to say, because these are electronic applications, the technical information that came in was several hundred pages of written text, and then I can't tell you how many reams of paper the tables, figures, and listings would actually have fit on. So there was a lot that was looked over here, we had about a total of 150 people working on various pieces of the application. Some of them almost really nonstop work through the holiday period of Thanksgiving to make sure that we could get this done as quickly as possible.
Steve, when the UK announced that they had approved the Pfizer vaccine so quickly, did you feel like you were going to have to call up the FDA Advisory Board and say, we're going to move up the meeting from that, I think it was last Thursday, to Monday because we have to approve it right away? Did you feel like you wanted to change the process when the UK announced approval?
Howard, absolutely not. I can unequivocally tell you that was not something we were going to do. Dr. Marks and I have been working since the summer, early summer, on the timeline associated with it. And Dr. Marks, who knows this in great detail, really outlined what that would be and what our scientists would need to do to actually make a decision. And so any movement of that would have meant we would be compromising our scientific review. And we both have been out there telling everyone that we weren't going to do that. So it wasn't an issue of being obstinate. It was an issue of sticking to the fact that we needed the time to do a thorough scientific review. And as we've said, we go line by line in the data. I mean, we just don't look at a scientific publication. We certainly just don't look at a scientific press release from a company. Our scientists look at the data and do the sort of analyses that you saw at last week's meeting. So we needed that time to get this thorough review done, and that's exactly what we did. So under no circumstances would it have been considered to change that date, because we needed the time to get the information done and do it right.
Yeah, I was pleased to see that some leaders in the scientific community, particularly Tony, Dr. Fauci, said, let the FDA do their thing. This is who they are. This is what they should do. I'm hoping that was perceived as support.
We're very grateful for the support of the scientific and academic community here, and I think went a long way toward continuing to support the process that we put in place.
Peter, right before we came on, you mentioned that actually there's differences for EUAs for a drug versus an EUA for a vaccine, and you're going to face many more of these. I know there's a hearing this Thursday for the Moderna vaccine. I think there's other phase 3 trials that are being completed and will submit EUAs. Could you explain the difference between an EUA for a vaccine versus a drug, and what will happen next around further approval?
Right. So first of all, I should say there's no difference in statute. So this is not like a legal distinction. This is something that we've imposed on ourselves at FDA through our guidance, the EUA guidance for COVID-19 vaccines. And that's because our usual standard for medical products for approval of a drug or biologic is the substantial evidence of effectiveness standard. Evidence from adequate and well-controlled trials that something has substantial evidence of effectiveness. That's kind of our gold standard. For the emergency use authorization, which was power that was given to us after the terrorist attacks of 9/11, when there was declared public health emergency, where maybe you might have medical products that hadn't been all the way through development that could have helped people with a disease that was chemical, biological, or radionuclear caused. The bar was set at the product may be effective and its known potential benefits had to outweigh its known potential risks. Now, for a preventative vaccine, that is probably a little bit lower than we would like to see, because we want to have people have confidence that when they get vaccinated, they are going to know that vaccine has a good chance of protecting them against the disease they're getting vaccinated against. and that it's a very safe product. And for that reason, in our guidance, we set forth notice that what we're doing here is making sure that the standard is that there has to be clear and compelling evidence that the vaccine is effective from well-designed phase 3 clinical trials. And so, although not quite the same BLA standard, the evidence we're going to have for effectiveness is very much like that we would have for a biologics license application. But the one place that it's a little shorter for us, or a little less close, is to the duration of safety follow-up that we'd have, which would normally be 6 months or a year. But we're making up for that with a pharmacovigilance plan that's very robust.
Yeah, we'll return to the post-licensure safety issues that have come up with a number of drugs over the last couple of years, and to ensure that there's follow-up from the companies. Steve, so you produced this document, you widely distribute it. I got it. I've read through it a few times. What surprised you about the data? Were there any surprises when you looked through the final report, Steve? I was just curious.
No, there weren't a lot of surprises. Peter and I have been talking about this for some time. Peter's team has been reviewing this on a rolling basis. Not surprised, but so impressed by the detail and the thoroughness that Peter's team put into this. And it's not just me blowing smoke, Howard. Just when you read it, when you understand, when you saw the presentations last week, it really gave clarity to what our career scientists do and what goes into our incredibly thorough review. I was particularly interested in some of the analyses that were done to look almost, if you will, a fishing expedition for side effects, and how thorough that was, and how that gave me great confidence in the decision making that had taken place. So I don't think for me personally, that there were any big surprises.
Now, Peter, you have like 100 people talking to you all day long, either by email or by phone, or you're doing conferences. Did anyone say, hey, did you look at page 492 and see this line? Wow, that's a surprise. Were there surprises for you and the group of reviewers, Peter?
You know, people actually, we looked at various pieces, and people did actually call out specific pieces of the file to have a look at. I think, actually, let me just back up to, you know, if there was anything that I could consider one of the most pleasant surprises I have had in a long time, 2020 is a year that I think if I could get out a big eraser and erase a lot of stuff with, I would do. But a moment of true joy was when we saw the data on the 95% effectiveness of the first vaccine out of the gate. I mean, that was just because, first of all, we were worried that would you be able to make, I mean, if you listened to Tony Fauci several months ago,
right,
we were worried that we'd even be able to get a vaccine this year, or even even into the next spring against this vaccine. We weren't sure we could make a good vaccine. And then to have a vaccine that had 95% effectiveness, what looked like across all different kind of populations, both young and old, granted with greater certainty in some populations than others, that was just really exciting.
Yeah, no, I do think it's worth congratulating the scientists at Pfizer and hopefully Moderna. It's been a difficult year. You know, there's often a lot of chatter about pharmaceutical houses or other startups, but in this case, the scientists at Pfizer and hopefully at Moderna and other companies have really distinguished themselves this year. There's been many, many challenges, but the science that brought us vaccines is extraordinary. And it really is a compliment to all of the investigators that have gone before and the current group of investigators at those two companies. What's the plan? So median follow-up, I think, is 2 months, if I read it correctly. I think both of you are well aware that the greatest concern of people who have been vaccine hesitant has been safety. I think the data about efficacy is extraordinary. We'll get a chance to see it from the Moderna group formally this week, both mRNA vaccines. And when I spoke to John Ioannidis, he said, I prefer 2 small trials and then just 1 large trial. Now, this will be 2 large trials, same biological approach. So if the numbers are the same, that will actually be very, very encouraging, particularly in the high risk groups, older than 65, where the confidence interval is very wide, and we'll be able to compare. But without doubt, for the public, the biggest concern has been safety. Steve, what's the plan for post-licensure surveillance?
Before you answer that, I want y'all to think about what he's actually saying. They're really concerned about the efficacy. And Moderna's rolling out information this week. And maybe next week or so, we get AstraZeneca's data. Either way it goes, we're collecting data from 3 companies coming soon. We'll have a total of 3 companies. Then we will be able to look at the data of the phase 3 trials and determine what has happened in these trials. And even though you're looking at their faces and you can see that they're excited about certain things, we know we still have an uphill battle with this particular virus. I was reading something today where they're saying that your home may be the hub for COVID-19 in some instances. And one of the reasons for that is because ventilation and things of that nature, people coming in and out of the house, you don't know where they're going, where they've been, who they've been around, so on and so forth. So we still got to be, very careful in our approach regarding our safety and the exposure to this particular virus for our families and so on and so forth. So later on, this week, we will be back, Science with Shawn, and we will be getting into the Moderna trials. We'll speak a little bit about it. I'm pretty sure that the pseudo killers want to get in on, gonna go in on that as well. But we're going to have all the available data. This is a good time for us to really see science at work. For those of us who actually are, who want to be critical in this process, but also want to know in this process. So let's see what he's saying about what's going on.
So post-authorization, and I'll ask Peter to give a little bit more detail about this, but we recognized exactly what you just said, Howard, and that is that although this situation is urgent and we needed to expedite both the development process, or help expedite, as well as the review process, we recognize that we had to get at least that 2-month median follow-up of data, because Peter's team had done a review of our previous vaccine approvals, and also it was in the literature, and really estimated that the majority of serious events should be picked up during that time period. So we had confidence about that, but recognizing that it isn't the full length of follow-up, we need to have in place a very robust mechanism for collecting data, particularly around safety, but I'll also mention efficacy, duration of protection, et cetera. And in Peter's guidance, and what we made clear, that is for a minimum of 2 years. And so we'll be using a variety of means, including partnering with the Centers for Disease Control, also claims data, which should be a rich source, and also mining electronic health records, of course, recognizing the protection of patient privacy. So all hands on deck for that one, and a very robust pharmacovigilance approach to monitor for safety events. And the partnership with CDC will be really important here. And I don't know if, Peter, you want to add to that.
Yeah, Peter, other questions, just if you could elaborate on safety, because it is, I think we can't spend enough time on it because it's so critical to the public. And then there remain questions about, when I spoke to Tony, I knew the questions already. We know it protects against disease, but there are other questions, not just about length of protecting against disease, but protecting against infection. So if you could comment on both those issues, Peter.
Yeah, let me start by taking my 3 questions that I'd love Jeannie to answer now if I could, but unfortunately we're going to have to do the scientific work to get them answered, and then I'll talk about safety. So the first question is duration of protection. How long will people be protected with this vaccine? Is it going to be months and months, or is it going to be years? The second is, will this vaccine prevent asymptomatic transmission? In other words, with asymptomatic carriers of will people just be protected against disease with the virus, from the virus, or will this abrogate transmission of this? And the other piece of this, which we haven't been thinking about as much, but I have to think of as a public health professional, is if this virus subtly drifts, kind of like flu can drift, is this vaccine going to have a robust enough immune response that it will protect against these drifted strains of the S protein, because it's really only these are S protein vaccines. These mRNA vaccines, will that protect? Now, the good news is mRNA, they can be shifted pretty quickly, but it would be nice to know. So those are the three things. But now getting to safety,
before he get into safety real quick, I don't know if many of you are actually let me just pull it up on the screen. If you're familiar with virus drifting. So real quick, I just want to explain to you guys what virus drifting is in the most professional way, okay? All right, so influenza viruses are constantly changing. They can change in two different ways. You have antigenic drift, and then you have antigenic shift. All right, so antigenic drift is one way influenza viruses change. It is called antigenic drift. These are small changes or mutations in the gene of influenza viruses that can lead to changes in the surface proteins of the virus, the HA, the hemoglobin, and the NA, the neuraminidase. Now, the HA and the NA surface proteins of influenza viruses are antigens, which means they are recognized by the immune system and are capable of triggering an immune response, including production of antibodies that can block infection. These changes associated with the antigenic drift happen continually over time as the virus replicates. Most flu shots are designed to target an influenza virus HA surface protein/antigens. The nasal spray flu vaccine targets both the HA and NA of the influenza virus. So for those of you who went and got a flu shot, right, you had an option of choosing just the regular flu shot or this nasal spray. Now, the small changes that occur from an antigenic drift usually produce viruses that are closely related to one another, which can be illustrated by the location close together of the paleogenic tree. Now, okay, they ain't gonna let me do it, so I ain't gonna take us off the page. But influenza viruses that are closely related to each other usually have similar antigenic properties. This means that the antibodies your immune system creates against one influenza virus will likely recognize and respond to antigenically similar influenza viruses. This is called cross protection, right? You know, you heard this word in the conversation because, you know, maybe potentially that'll happen if a drift occurs. However, the small changes associated with the antigenic drift can accumulate over time and result in viruses that are antigenically different, further away of a phylogenetic tree, okay? Now, y'all know anything about this word right here? Relating to the evolutionary development and diversification of a species or a group of organisms or a particular feature of an organism? Yeah. More specific. See, same thing. Evolutionary tree is a branching diagram of a tree showing the evolutionary relationships among various biological species or other entities. Their phylogeny, based upon similarities and differences in their physical and genetic characteristics. All life on Earth is part of a single phylogenetic tree, indicating common ancestry. It's that evolutionary stuff. There you go. Now, it is also possible for single or small change in a particular important location of the HA to result in antigenic drift. When antigenic drift occurs, the body's immune system may not recognize and prevent sickness caused by the newer influenza virus. As a result, a person becomes susceptible to flu infection again, as antigenic drift has changed the virus enough that a person's existing antibodies won't neutralize the newer influenza virus. Antigenic drift is the main reason why people can get flu more than one time. And it's also a primary reason why the flu vaccine compensation must be reviewed and updated each year as needed to keep up with evolving flu viruses. This is why they say, you know, they make that decision about the flu. So now y'all know that the flu has an antigenic drift. because you have so many different flus that actually exist anyway. All right. Yeah, Black African Power, Olakun. Yeah. What up, Keisha? What up, Mika? Akume and Benita. Yeah, peace to everybody that's joining now. Now, the other type of change is the antigenic shift. The antigenic shift is a root major change in the influenza A virus, results in new HA and or new H and NA proteins in influenza viruses that infect humans. Shift can result in a new influenza A subtype in humans. One way shift can happen is when an influenza virus from an animal population gains the ability to infect humans. Such animal origin viruses can contain an HA or HA/NA combination that is different from the same subtype in humans that most people do not have immunity to the new novel virus. Now, such a shift occurred in the spring of 2009 with the H1N1 virus, with the genes from North American swine, Eurasian swine, humans, and birds emerged to infect people and quickly spread, causing a pandemic. When shift happens, most people have little or no immunity against the new virus. While influenza virus change all the time due to antigenic drift, antigenic shift happens less frequently. Influenza pandemics occur very rarely. There have been 4 pandemics in the past 100 years. For more information, see pandemic flu. Type A viruses undergo both antigenic drift and shift, okay? And are the only influenza viruses known to cause pandemics, while influenza type B viruses change only by the more gradual process of antigenic drift. All right. Let's see what he says now. Let me just bag it up a little bit so everybody know where we at.
These drifted strains of the S protein, the response that it will protect is public health. Will people just be protected against disease with the virus, from the virus, or will this abrogate transmission of this? And the other piece of this, which we haven't been thinking about as much, but I have to think of as a public health professional, is if this virus subtly drifts,
right,
kind of like flu can drift,
right,
is this vaccine going to have a robust enough immune response that it will protect against these drifted strains of the S protein? Because it's really only these are S protein vaccines, these mRNA vaccines. Will that protect? Now, the good news is, as mRNA, they can be shifted pretty quickly, but it would be nice to know. So those are the 3 things. But now getting to safety, we very much are committed to understanding as much as we can about the safety of these vaccines. We know that as these are deployed in millions of individuals, we'll get a better sense of what's going on. We're absolutely committed to making sure the public is aware of any safety findings that we see once we've really dogged them down and made sure that we understand them. We have to be careful here, because as we deploy these vaccines, safety signals come. We have to make sure we understand that they're real, and that they're meaningful. And once we understand that, we're not going to hesitate to make sure the providers and patients or individuals getting vaccinated are aware of this. So that will happen because we have these ongoing safety surveillance systems in conjunction with Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And that's actually also an important point to bring out here, that FDA cross-government collaborations can be very powerful. The combination of CDC's safety surveillance and our safety surveillance, we're going to apply that full portfolio of safety surveillance systems to make sure that we do our best to understand what's going on here.
Peter, I just want to emphasize for people who are listening, and I know Steve's an oncologist, so I don't think there's any reason to think that any vaccine induces cancer. So 500,000 people are diagnosed with cancer each year. I don't think people are concerned that you get a vaccine and then you develop cancer. But people have heart attacks every day, and they have strokes every day. And so now we know that the number of 20,000 hopefully will go to a few million over the next couple weeks. So people are going to have heart attacks and strokes proximal to the time of getting the vaccine. That does not mean that the vaccine caused that event. And I don't think we as professionals can emphasize that enough to the public. Steve, can you comment on that?
All right, so basically what he's saying right here, and I hope all of y'all caught that when he was kicking it, is that I'm gonna let him repeat himself, and I want y'all to pay attention closely to what he's saying right here, right? Because he's giving you some critical information because they're talking about this vaccine in a way that we need to be educated upon what's going on.
Answer. So people, 500,000 people are.
Or that we do our best to understand what's going on here.
Peter, I just want to emphasize for people who are listening, and I know Steve's an oncologist, so I don't think there's any reason to think that any vaccine induces cancer. So people, 500,000 people are diagnosed with cancer each year. I don't think people are concerned that you get a vaccine and then you develop cancer. But people have heart attacks every day and they have strokes every day. And so now we know that the number of 20,000 hopefully will go to a few million over the next couple weeks. So people are going to have heart attacks and strokes proximal to the time of getting the vaccine. That does not mean that the vaccine caused that event. And I don't think we as professionals can emphasize that enough to the public. Steve, can you comment on that issue? And then you, Peter.
Yeah, Peter and I have talked about this a lot. It's one of the reasons that we need to collect as much evidence and data as possible, because we need to understand what the background is of these very common events, and then reassure the public and be transparent about it. That, for example, if we aren't seeing anything, that it's at the background and base level. And Howard, you're right. I mean, Peter and I and you, we've all taken care of patients. People will get this if we explain it to them, and we're transparent about it. And so I think having this conversation about those background events, I mean, vaccines are going to be given to people who are in long-term care facilities, right. And we know things happen, medical events happen to those individuals as well. So having some tracking of those data and being able to communicate about this is just so important.
Peter?
Yeah, 2 points I'd like to make is that this is what Commissioner Hahn just said is really important, and what you just said is really important, because we have such a microscope focused on collecting these adverse events. We don't want to get into a panic like those may remember a few months ago, South Korea had a panic around influenza vaccine. That influenza vaccine was leading to excess deaths in the elderly population, 70 and 80-year-olds. Well, it just so happened that they were doing such good safety surveillance that they were picking up the natural death rate in that population. And when they went back and looked, it was just, they had a very good influenza campaign, and it was just the natural rate that they would expect. So we have to be careful. Now that doesn't mean, and that I want to make sure that people understand, that doesn't mean we're going to pass by. It's our duty to look very closely at this, and we take that very seriously. So that should really be known. Another thing that vaccination, though, is it's important to understand here in terms of the totality of benefit here. Vaccines in this case will not only have the benefit of preventing COVID-19 disease, if they can get us back to a normal environment sooner, they're going to help prevent a lot of other diseases, because if you look at the recent publications of the excess mortality in the United States from people not getting routine care, that's not a good thing either. So the vaccines here, probably a good graduate student project for someone to figure out totally how each vaccine really benefits here, more than just by preventing the disease, COVID-19 disease itself.
Right. New York Times had a nice lead article yesterday about this excess mortality, and they referred to 3 publications JAMA's had by Steve Wolf, because Steve's really tried to be careful about saying we count deaths very well. So we know how many deaths usually occur every month, and then you know how many have occurred this year, and there's that excess number. A couple questions have come in, and I'd like to just ask the 2 of you about them. Can the guests address patients with allergy? Now, this has emerged because of some of the early reports from the UK that has made, I think will make people in the US anxious, Less so for the first group that will get it, because they'll get it within hospitals. But comments about people with a history of allergy and whether they should get the vaccine when it ultimately becomes available.
Yeah, Peter, why don't you take that? You wrote the
very, very happy to take that one. I think we have looked at this very closely, and what we would say is that unless you've had an allergy that was severe allergic reaction to a vaccine or a known vaccine component, probably the most common things that are components of this vaccine that someone might have had an allergic reaction to might be polysorbate or polyethylene glycol. But unless you've had an allergic reaction to a vaccine, we're not concerned with people going to get vaccinated. As a precaution, for the time being, whether they're hospitals or whether they're going to be other facilities, we're saying that there should be the ability to treat an anaphylactic reaction. But we say that with other vaccines as well. That's not just special for that. That's just something for newly deployed vaccines that we would say. And we're comfortable with that. We've looked at the database that was put together, and that's why it's helpful to have a database of 22,000 people. There were not an excess of allergic reactions that was significant. So we're pretty comfortable with this. Obviously, we're going to monitor this very closely, and we'll give physicians additional advice, providers additional advice if we see anything new turn up.
Bell's palsy, 4 cases, not uncommon. Post-immunization, it always becomes a struggle to know if it's just background noise or if it's related to the vaccine. But it comes up with almost every vaccine. I'm a pediatrician, so those data I'm familiar with. Comment about Bell's palsy.
So I'll take that one because we've added that to the list. So we have this list of 20 things that we're going to query the large databases for. That's an easy one to use claims-based databases and the electronic health record. We'll get data on that pretty quickly and see if it is indeed our hypothesis. Our working hypothesis is this just was an imbalance in background rates like we've seen in other trials, but we'll make sure that we're going to actually query for that just to bring that question to close.
Steve, this week a few million doses are going to be shipped. It's complicated. I'm actually confident that we can manage a few million. Now, when we get to tens of millions, I am more anxious about the infrastructure. What role does the FDA play now in the manufacturing and shipping? Do you monitor up to the time that it's in the box and getting ready to be shipped? I don't know what the FDA role becomes after approval.
Well, Peter is commonly says, and it's true, our work is not done after issuing an EUA. First of all, I think having conversations like this, being clear about the issues around allergies, Bell's palsy, our follow-up system for surveillance, those are really critical issues. Peter and I had a call with groups from the OBGYN community talking about the risks associated with pregnancy, risk-benefit ratio. All of these things are part of our job. Now, also, Peter's group has done a terrific job of helping to provide support to all developers of vaccines around raw materials and the supply chain associated with vaccines. So that's another one of our core responsibilities, as well as ensuring, number one, that the manufacturing of vaccine, every vaccine that comes off the line meets our high standards and the GMP is being used to manufacture this. But number two, that the storage conditions are appropriate for the vaccines. And so we do actually get involved in ensuring that we're comfortable that those conditions are being followed. And our teams are working on that. And as you can imagine with the first 2 vaccines, that's part of the issues. Cold chain.
Peter, you said if you were a genie, you'd like 3 more questions to be answered. Protecting against infection, how long it would last, and I think there was a third. Could you be that genie for a few minutes? What are your instincts tell you about length of protection and protecting against asymptomatic disease or spreading of infection? What does the genie in your bottle say?
Yeah, so the genie in my bottle says that we can extrapolate a little from those who were immunized earliest on the current trials, because we at least know that there's probably a duration of protection of several months. It's probably not just 2 months. Okay. It's probably at least on the order of 4 to 6 months. The question is, will it reach out to a year? Hopefully, yes, but I think we'll have those data in the not too distant future, and we'll have real data because of the people who are being followed on the trial. Asymptomatic transmission will be harder to know for sure. I'm gonna tell you my hope is that since in animal studies it does look like these vaccines led to cessation of asymptomatic shedding, that will hopefully be the case, but we don't know for sure. I believe that NIH is contemplating a study in this regard, because at this point in time where we have so much COVID-19 around, it's not that hard to do a study in which you do nasal swabs routinely on a relatively healthy population, college-age population perhaps, to see how many the vaccine might prevent shedding in versus a placebo group. So this could be something that would get to that, and I know that that's being discussed right now. So that will hopefully again get data here. Otherwise, one's going to have to use observational data, which one can do, but it's not going to be quite as clean. And then obviously for strain drift, that we have lots of different public health agencies across the globe collecting the different strains that are there, and we'll be keeping a close monitor on that to make sure that we don't see changes in the S protein that would make us worry that our current vaccine might lose its effectiveness.
Steve, I feel like I have to ask you one final question, and I do want to read something from what came in over the email. You know, there had been reports that Friday was a difficult day for you. And I want you to be able to comment publicly, just in a conversation. What was Friday like for you?
Friday was a really great day for the American people. And it was a really good day for FDA, but most importantly, the American people, as we begin to have some hope and light about turning this pandemic around, and maybe seeing the end of it. I certainly, you know, there has been pressure to move as quickly as possible because of the urgency of this pandemic. And there's been a lot of externalities, noise, if you will, that certainly a lot of people have heard. But Howard, I can tell you, Peter, our teams have been steadfast that we'll use science and data to guide this. We're not going to let politics enter into this. And this isn't about me. This isn't about any one individual. This is about the American people and following the science and data. So when I reflect back on Friday, my one thought is very happy and very hopeful, because our scientists had determined that a vaccine was safe and effective, and that means a lot to our country.
Well, congratulations to the two of you. Peter, to your entire team. I wish I could give them all masks or kisses or hugs. It's been a long year, and for us to recover economically, for us to recover socially and mentally, we really do need these vaccines to be effective, to be distributed and used wisely. I want to read one last comment. I thank the FDA for their diligence and commitment to the health of our country. Many more good wishes. I wish the two of you a happy new year. Stay healthy. And thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Howard.
See you, Steve. Bye, Peter.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right. So what do y'all think about that whole Q&A session with members of the FDA, heads of the FDA? What y'all think about that? What you talking about, Savio? What you mean? Oh, decline. Bro, I can use James Hildreth, but he ain't came out and said anything related to the actual conversation just yet where he has been doing this. Let me check. Let me see what James is saying, if he said anything. He was on C-SPAN 2 days ago, but I haven't heard him saying anything else since then. So let's take a look and see what, since I'm using the enemy, Sabio, I'm gonna give you some bonus material. This for you right here. Man, they hating, man. I'm trying to do all that.
Washington Journal continues.
We're back with Dr. James Hildreth, who is the president of Meharry Medical College and also a member of the FDA's Vaccine and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee, who approved the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine just earlier this week for use. Dr. Hildreth, good morning.
Good morning.
All right.
So hold on. Before I let the doctor talk, here in my city, he was a part of the FDA panel who voted to approve the vaccine, as you can see at the top. But he also has done major research on HIV and AIDS, and he continues to do research on that. He's also led the warp speed efforts for Tennessee and set up camps and testing sites for people to get tested and to collect data and orchestrate that those efforts in minority communities, which allow people who were living in the street, low-income housing and development and so on and so forth, to get tested and to educate them on the mRNA vaccine and how this is going to work. So we're dealing with people that look like us right now, since, you know what I'm saying, my boy threw a curveball at me.
I'm doing great. So late last week, the FDA Advisory Panel, where you sit, voted to recommend authorizing emergency use of the Pfizer vaccine. You voted yes. Tell us why.
So I voted yes because the preponderance of evidence suggested that the benefits greatly outweighed the risk. There's a very large study enrolling 44,000 people. Half of those got the placebo and half got the vaccine. And the risks from the vaccine were limited to reactions at the injection site, fever, all the things you would normally expect when you first use a vaccine. Other than that, even though the follow-up has been fairly short, we all thought that the safety profile was sufficient. I think the 4 who voted no out of the 21 members of the panel were concerned about the lower age limit that was set in the statement we voted on. They were a little bit concerned that there weren't enough 16-year-olds in the study, but the way that that's going to be dealt with is the recommendations to the healthcare workers who will be giving the vaccine. There'll probably be a recommendation by the CDC that it not be given to the younger age group at this time, and also not to pregnant women or those with severe allergies. So we just thought that there's a large amount of data, and the data altogether suggests that the benefits of the vaccine outweigh the risks, so we voted to approve it.
So this vaccine has been approved under emergency use authorization. Tell us exactly what that is, and what's the difference between emergency use authorization and just a regular vaccine that has been approved?
So emergency use authorization is possible when one of the national agencies or the president declares a national emergency. Under those circumstances, if there are no treatments available or other interventions available to deal with the national emergency, it's possible then to issue an emergency use authorization where all that's required is that there's a reasonable expectation as determined by experts that the intervention will work. Now, I should tell you that the folks at Pfizer, Moderna, and all the other companies are going to let their applications proceed to what's called a Biologics license application, and that will mean full approval. So the difference between a full approval and the EUA is that in this case, there is a national emergency, and all that was required is that there be a reasonable proof that the vaccine would work. And I think that bar has been more than met. So that's the difference, is that we're in a national emergency, and that allows the FDA commissioner to grant emergency use of vaccines.
All right. So again, ladies and gentlemen, this is the president and CEO of Meharry Medical. He is also on the vaccine committee. He was selected to be a member of the FDA Vaccine Approval Board. He voted for the vaccine because he is well studied. You could pull him up. You can Google him. Now, I'm trying to make sure that C-SPAN don't try to pause the video in other areas and, try to mess up everything. But this was done when it was done. You see the date? I don't even know what today's date is. The 14th, I think. But so we're getting the most recent news right now regarding the science behind this. But I'm being very careful because I do not want them to pause this video. And I didn't go live on Facebook to back it up. But if they do pause the video, then I am going to just go behind it and I can play the video at a different time on YouTube Live. I was trying to see if they also had this in audio and not just video. But we can review this. I mean, it's the Fair Use Act. We should be able to use this as an educational purpose. The stream also has the COVID-19 stuff on that. So we should be good. Description will be in the link and so on and so forth. I got to update the link, so the description will be in the link. And this is from the Washington Journal, so hopefully we don't run too much into it. This is governmental stuff, so we taxpayers, we should be able to rock out.
Now, like you said, we're in the middle of a national emergency with the COVID-19 virus going through the country. Should people be concerned about this vaccine and the fact that it actually was developed and now is being used so quickly compared to vaccines in the past, which took much longer to make it out into the public?
I think it's reasonable that people would be concerned because it appears that the vaccine was developed so quickly. But let me just offer a few thoughts that might assuage the concerns that people have. There are a number of things that have made it possible for this to happen so quickly. First of all, is that the technology available to the scientists involved is just incredible. And I'll just give you one example. The genome for the virus was published, fully sequenced and published in early January. Less than a month later, or about a month later, a couple of companies had already identified a candidate for a vaccine. Identifying a vaccine candidate can take as long as 2 years. And sometimes it's taken longer than that. And in fact, for HIV, we still don't have a candidate identified that seems to work. So the technology is amazing. And one example is how quickly technology allowed us to identify a candidate for the vaccine. The second one is there have been parallel processes in working here. Normally, the vaccine development process is iterative. You do one step, that informs the next step, and et cetera, et cetera. Some of those things have been done in parallel, which compresses the time frame. So by technology and having parallel processes, you compress the time frame. The third thing, which I think is very important, is you know that we've been working on an HIV vaccine around the world now for more than 20 years, closer to 30 years, I guess. And there's this pre-existing infrastructure dedicated to developing an HIV vaccine. And what has happened is that infrastructure has been turned to COVID-19. So having all these scientists and academic health centers and drug companies that have been focused on HIV vaccines, you had an infrastructure that could quickly pivot and focus on COVID-19. So I think the infrastructure, the parallel processes, and the technology all have meant a very quick process. And it's going to be viewed, I believe, as one of the great achievements of science to develop a vaccine for a pandemic virus in 11 months. It's just totally incredible. And so people are correct that it's fast, but there are good reasons for it.
Let me remind our viewers that they can take part in this conversation. We're going to open up regional lines for this conversation about the FDA approval of the coronavirus vaccine. That means that if you are in the Eastern or Central time zones, we want to hear from you at 202-748-8000. If you are in the Mountain or Pacific time zones, we want you to call 202-748-8001. Remember, you can always text us your questions at 202-748-8003, and we're always reading on social media, on Twitter at C-SPAN WJ, and on Facebook at facebook.com/C-SPAN. So Dr. Hildreth, you said earlier that some members of the panel on which you sit did not vote yes on this emergency use authorization for the Pfizer vaccine. What was some of their concerns, and should their concerns have been listened to?
So the actual vote count was 17 voted yes, including myself. There were 4 members who voted no, and there was 1 member who abstained from voting. The concerns of those who voted no related to a couple of things. One is that they did not feel there was sufficient data to include the 16-year-olds in the approval, and they recommended that the FDA change the language that we were voting on to state that we're voting on an approval for 18 years and older. But the FDA was not willing or could not change the language because the sponsor, Pfizer, that's what we had in front of us, and we had to vote on that. And so some of the members felt that lowering the age or raising the age to 18 would make them comfortable in voting yes. Because it was not changed from 16 to 18, I believe that's why some of them actually voted no. And I think every member of the committee, however, felt that the efficacy data was very compelling and had met the bar. I mean, the expectation that the FDA had was that they would approve for an EUA at least a vaccine with an efficacy of 50% or better. So clearly having a vaccine with 95% efficacy was truly something extraordinary under the circumstances. And the data confirmed the efficacy. And as I said, the safety data, it is what it is. We only have a few months of safety data in front of us, but that seemed also very sufficient for EUA. And so we voted yes. But the members who voted no were concerned about whether or not the age limit should be raised to 18 versus 16.
And as we're talking, Dr. Hildreth, we can see the Pfizer vaccine being loaded on trucks at the Pfizer facility in Kalamazoo, Michigan, getting ready to go out to people in the United States. Now, Dr. Hildreth, I don't know if you know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask you anyway and see if you can give us the answer. So is this Pfizer vaccine like a flu vaccine? You have to take it every year, or will you have to take this vaccine every few months? Or is it like the mumps vaccine where you give it to someone and it's years before they need it again? Do we know how long it'll be between doses of any of these vaccines that are coming out?
We just don't know the answer yet. It's likely, well, it's not likely. We know that the vaccination gives immunity that's at least as long, but probably much longer than infection would. For example, we know that people who get infected can be reinfected within a couple of months or so, which means that the immunity to the virus from getting infected is not long lasting. It lasts for a few months at most. but there's an expectation based on some preliminary data that the vaccine will give longer protection than that. But how long, we just don't know yet, because there has to be some additional follow-up. One of the things that's going to happen in the trial, the trial is going to go on, continue, and so the individuals in the trial will be followed for 2 years. So that will give us a lot of information about how long the immunity lasts. And quite honestly, we don't know that if we get enough people vaccinated, for example, 60 to 80% of the population, the virus may then go away because it cannot be transmitted on a wide scale to a number of people. But the answer to your question is that we just don't know at this time. We have to wait and get more data.
Now, we've heard several people along the way say things like the benefit of the vaccine is worth the risk. Is the saying the benefit is worth the risk is the same thing as saying the vaccine is safe?
No, well, they're not the same thing, obviously. But the truth is that none of us, the experts on the panel, the folks at Pfizer, none of us can say with absolute certainty that the vaccine is absolutely safe. I mean, take for example, what happened in the UK. When they first started giving the vaccine, there were a couple of individuals who had severe allergic reactions to the vaccine. That does not mean that the vaccine is not safe. That just means that there are persons who might have allergies to a component in the vaccine. So what we have to do now is to find out what was it in the vaccine that caused those two individuals to have the allergic reaction. And once we know what that is, we can screen people before we give them the vaccine to make sure they won't have that reaction.
All right. So you remember the other day we talked about the allergic reactions, right? And you heard me say that the data is saying that people with allergies, they're asking them to not get the vaccination because they are doing research on the individuals who the two individuals that didn't respond well to the vaccination because of their allergies or their allergies. Now, you just heard Mr. Hildreth. If I need to play it again, I'll rewind it back. But I want to kind of get through the video because we've been listening to we've been listening to everybody else talk about it. And it's the first time that y'all probably have bear witness to seeing somebody that looked like you on the screen talking about this vaccine. And that's actually in the field tackling it from a biological perspective. And that's really, 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 really qualified and able to be a part of such a magnificent situation for himself. So what they do, Zane, is the same way we've been talking about collecting data, communicating with the hospital, with their personal doctors. You know what I'm saying? Like, what allergens do you have? You know, like just when you go into to the doctor's office, if it's your first time going, they ask you a whole bunch of questions on the questionnaire. They ask if you have any allergies, or what are you allergic to, what type of medicine that you're taking for the reactions, or are you just dealing with it naturally? You know how they want to know more information. They ask you one question that leads to another question, and then if you're answering that, then they're gonna want to know if you're on any type of medication. And once they figure out that you're on some type of medication, they're making determinations based on that. But they had a data now because of the two people that actually that already had like rough allergies, so we can kind of go on and go from there. Yep, medical history.
And that's the kind of process that will happen now going forward. We will learn more about allergic reactions. We'll learn more about some other sensitivities that may exist. But every time a vaccine has been introduced into the public, I believe there's been examples of people having allergic reactions. And typically, if there's going to be a really strong adverse reaction to a vaccine, it happens within the first 6 to 8 weeks. And I think that's why the FDA required 2 months of follow-up before they would approve the vaccine. And large numbers of the people who participated in the vaccine trial were followed for more than 2 months. And again, that gave us some comfort that we could approve the vaccine and not worry too much about short-term risk of it. But nobody can say definitively that the vaccine is absolutely safe on all circumstances because it was just introduced into the population. But given what we know about other vaccines and given what we know about what's in the vaccine formulation, I think it's fair to say that the benefits greatly outweigh the risk in this case, given we have a vaccine with 95% efficacy.
Let's let some of our viewers take part in this conversation. We'll start with Eric, who's calling from Lincoln, Nebraska. Eric, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Thank you so much for taking my call. The development of these vaccines is just, to me, a medical miracle, the likes of which the human race has never seen before. And so I look forward to getting it as soon as I can. In China, for example, or on the other hand, where this virus started, they have largely controlled this virus through strict lockdowns and the people adhering to, the restrictions that the government puts in place. On the other hand, here in the United States, the situation is out of control. Our governor here in Nebraska, for example, the minute there's any reduction in cases, he just lowers relaxes the restrictions. And so, Dr. Hildreth, what I'm wondering is, has the United States failed in controlling this virus without a vaccine, just through sheer will? Thank you.
Well, clearly, to the caller's point, the numbers speak for themselves. We have 1/5 of all the cases in the world, and about that many percentage of the deaths, and we only represent 4% of the global population. So the numbers themselves speak to the fact that as a country, we've not done as good a job as we might have done. And one of the challenges that I pointed out in an earlier conversation on the show is that viruses, including this one, do not respect borders. They don't respect city borders, state borders, county borders, even continental borders. And wherever people go, the virus goes along with them. And what we really needed from the beginning was a nationally coordinated strategy in which all of us did the same things at the same time for a limited amount of time. And that would have made a huge difference. What I'm trying to say is that a national lockdown for 2 or 3 weeks at the beginning would have made all the difference. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So I'm pleased to say, though, that the coordination for distributing the vaccine matches the scientific accomplishments from the point of view of coordinating this, the planning that's gone into it. So I think this will be one of those things that will be looked on in history as something quite significant that has been managed to be done in such a short time. So I agree with you that we could have done a better job as a nation in controlling the virus. But looking forward, I do believe that we're going to be able to put this behind us now that multiple vaccines are on the way.
Dr. Hildreth, I want to show you something that was said by the Operation Warp Speed Chief Operating Officer, Gustav Perna. He spoke Saturday about the distribution of the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. Here's what he said.
My guidance was to ensure this precious commodity is received by the trained professionals at each state. We had to plan for the best outcome without knowing exactly when EUA would occur. When the decision occurred last night, we immediately went into action and implemented our hourly and now our D-Day sequence. We implemented a sliding scale that allows us to ensure that everything is in place, that people are positioned and ready accordingly. I expect the first shipments to arrive Monday morning. Extensive coordination will ensure that this occurs. We have worked with Pfizer, McKesson, UPS, FedEx, federal and local law enforcement agencies to ensure safety and security of the vaccine. Make no mistake, distribution has begun. Right now, boxes are being packed and loaded with vaccine with emphasis on quality control. Within the next 24 hours, they will begin moving vaccine from the Pfizer manufacturing facility to the UPS and FedEx hubs. And then it will go out to the 636 locations nationwide, which were identified by the states and the territories. We expect 145 sites across all the states to receive vaccine on Monday, another 425 sites on Tuesday, and the final 66 sites on Wednesday, which will complete the initial delivery of the Pfizer orders for vaccine.
Once again, Dr. Hildreth, we're seeing those vaccines going out just like the general said there. Who is going to be getting these first shipments of vaccines?
Well, the governors have been working with the CDC to decide how the vaccines will be distributed in their individual states. And for the most part, it's going to be those frontline healthcare workers or those living in assisted living facilities that will be the first ones to get it. And I think one of the things that people should understand is that the planning for distribution got underway at the same time the development of the vaccine got underway, which is, again, one of those things where that process has been happening in the background all along to make sure that this would happen so quickly. And to have FedEx, UPS, and a commander from the military does logistical mobilizations really, really well. So it's very encouraging that they were in charge of this. But the other thing that is happening is this collaboration between major corporations is also amazing. And we've not seen this before. And you may not know this, but CBS is playing a big role in this. And why you say, why CBS? Well, something like 90% of the US population, the entire population, lives within a few miles of a CVS store or pharmacy. And so they've been asked, because they have a lot of experience, of course, in handling drugs and vaccines, they've been asked to assist in getting the vaccine out to assisted living facilities, and they're doing that. So I think the logistical coordination and collaboration here is quite remarkable, something like we've never seen before. And it's going to be necessary because 330 million people need to get a vaccine eventually. And this level of coordination will be necessary. So it's really pleasing to see it happening. But again, the planning for this started at the beginning of the year.
Well, like you said, there's a bunch of people in the United States who need to get this vaccine. So far, according to the Johns Hopkins University, there's been more than 16 million confirmed cases of coronavirus in the United States and 297,843 deaths from the coronavirus here in the United States so far. So how do you convince people, knowing those numbers, how do you convince people who have concerns about the safety of the vaccine that they should take it?
Well, I mean, clearly, in some respects, getting that done is going to be as important as developing the vaccine. And as I've said so many times, vaccines do not save lives, vaccinations do. So all this wonderful work by the scientists and all the other people involved won't mean much if we can't convince people to accept the vaccines. And one of the things that we're doing at Meharry Medical College is to recognize how important it is to have trusted messengers. In other words, we could have all the messages about safety and how it was developed and the science behind it. But if people don't trust the people delivering that message or those communications, it's not going to be effective. So we believe it's very important for people who are respected in their communities to be out front helping us with this. That includes the providers themselves. Physicians are trusted by their patients, faith leaders, the leaders of churches. Another example, maybe community organizations. But it's incumbent upon us to provide enough information so that people will make an informed decision. Because we have to give people agency. We have to give them the power to make the decision. And the power comes from having enough information that you feel comfortable deciding to go forward. But all I can tell you is that the science that's been done is very solid. No steps were omitted. Everything that's needed to demonstrate safety by the companies have been done. There's something called a data safety monitoring board or committee that on a weekly basis examines the data from the companies to make sure there are no what we call safety signals, anything happening that would cause concern for the participants. And that's been happening on a weekly basis. These are independent experts, sometimes includes a patient advocate, and they get to see the data in real time and monitor it constantly to make sure there's nothing happening that should not be happening. So I think that my answer is that everything that can be done to make sure that it's safe has been done. And people wonder about the messenger RNA technology because it seems to be new. Well, it's new to vaccine technology, but not new to medicine. I think the first mention or first reference to mRNA as a treatment for diseases occurred in 1992. And if you go to the National Library of Medicine and do a search on messenger RNA and clinical medicine, you'll see thousands and thousands of papers have been published on this. So it's a new technology, the vaccines, but it's certainly not new in terms of clinical medicine. So I think all those things together should give people some reassurance that they can take the virus and not feel too concerned about it.
Let's talk to Bob, who's calling from Waxhaw, North Carolina. Bob, good morning.
Hey, good morning, and thanks for taking my call. I just had to, first of all, I'd just like to say it's very fantastic, the collaboration between the government and private industry, which has been able to develop this vaccine so quickly and effectively.
Yes.
But my real question is something I'm just curious about. You know, I'm old enough to remember the oral vaccine, which was given on a sugar cube. And now all we do with vaccines is we give them with an injection, which you have nothing against needles. But is there a reason why we just don't take vaccines orally anymore?
That's a really excellent question. And the answer relates to the fundamental nature of the vaccine itself. Now, as you know, when you take something ingested orally, it gets into the stomach where the pH is between 1 and 2. In other words, it's as acidic in your stomach as it would be almost as in a car battery. I mean, it's very, very acidic. And certain biological molecules will get destroyed by getting exposed to such acidic environments. So mRNA is one of those. If you put mRNA in a solution that has a pH of 1 or 2, it's going to fall apart fairly quickly. And messenger RNAs, by their nature, are very unstable, so they would certainly not survive being administered orally unless you encapsulated them into something that might limit their uptake by the cells. So turns out that muscle cells are very efficient in taking up messenger RNAs and making the protein that the immune system needs to see. And if I might, we're using a messenger RNA as a vaccine candidate. And again, this is not new to medicine, but new to vaccines. What happens is the mRNA must get inside of a cell, in this case, muscle cells, and it's the blueprint for making the virus protein, the spike protein, which allows the virus to bind to and enter into cells. So we inject it into the arm because we're putting it into the muscle where those cells are that can very efficiently take up the messenger RNA and make the protein, and the immune system can respond to it. So it's the nature of the vaccines themselves that dictate whether they need to be injected or taken by mouth. And formulating something for oral administration to be seen by the immune system is rather more challenging than doing it by injection. So eventually it may be possible to develop something that would work for this kind of platform for mRNA, but the technology for doing that so far is not available to us. So unfortunately, it has to be a shot.
How many injections can we expect to get if you are getting this vaccine? Is it one shot? Is it 2 shots? Is it multiple shots? What can we expect?
So people getting the vaccine can expect 2 shots in the arm, the muscle of the arm, 21 days apart. And immunity sets in, full immunity, full protection, based on the data we have, sets in at about 7 days after the second injection. The way the immune system works is the first time you see something foreign to your body, there's something called a primary immune response. And it can be strong, but usually not very strong. And it lasts for several weeks. But the next time you see that same thing, a month or so later, you make a secondary response, which can be 100 times stronger than the first response. But more importantly, you generate large numbers of what are called memory cells. And the memory cells in the immune system are responsible for long-lasting immunity. In other words, we have cells that remember how to respond to something. And as long as you have those cells in your body, the next time you see that something, you can make a strong response. So the secondary response caused by the second injection is kind of the secret sauce here to make sure that we have long-lasting immunity.
As we're talking, Dr. Hildreth, you can see on our screen the shipments of the vaccine going out from the Kalamazoo, Michigan Pfizer facility, going out to, like Dr. Hildreth said, to CVS's and other facilities around the country to begin giving people the coronavirus vaccine. Dr. Hildreth, one of our social media followers has a question for you. It's a question that I have as well. They want to know, do you know if people who are vaccinated are still infectious? So if you get the vaccine, can you then still spread it to other people?
That's a really important question. And the honest answer is we just don't know, because the vaccine trial was not designed to find asymptomatic infections. The way this worked is we have the volunteers, 40,000 of them thereabouts. Half got the placebo, half got the vaccine candidate. They were asked to go about their daily lives, and if they developed symptoms of COVID-19, they were supposed to contact the physician involved in the study that enrolled them. They would then get a PCR test to confirm whether or not they had COVID-19, in which case that would be recorded as an event, as a trial event. Unfortunately, not everyone in the study was monitored for asymptomatic infections. In other words, if you did not develop symptoms sufficient enough to cause you to contact the enrolling physician in the trial, it did not count as an event. So we honestly don't know whether or not there are some individuals who got infected who remained asymptomatic, as is possible, as you know, and asymptomatic folks can transmit the virus. So we don't actually know that. One of the things that's happening, though, that's, I think, very exciting is a subgroup of the participants are being evaluated for the presence of antibodies to the nucleocapsid protein of SARS-CoV-2. The significance of that is that when you get infected by the virus, you make antibodies to all of the proteins, to spike protein, to the nucleocapsid protein, the membrane proteins, and all of those. So when you get vaccinated, you only make antibodies to the spike protein because that's what's in the vaccine. So someone with antibodies to other proteins besides spike would mean that they must have been infected or exposed to the virus and responded to it. So by looking for antibodies to the N protein, we will know whether or not there are some folks who were involved in the study who got infected, but it did not come to the attention of the study leaders. So we will have some answers regarding that, but the truth is that for the time being, we just cannot answer that question because we don't have the data yet.
So does that mean that you would recommend, even for people who have gotten the vaccine, that they continue to social distance, wash their hands, wear a mask?
Yes. I mean, I think that especially between the first injection and the second injection, before that full protection, it'll be wise to keep doing those things. And even after the second injection, to be quite honest with you, I would recommend continuing to wear the mask until we have achieved what is referred to as herd immunity. I know people, that might be disappointing to hear because we're also anxious to be done with all of that. But we need to get to the point where at least 60%, but more ideally 80% or more of the population has been vaccinated. Then we can all really think about going back to some semblance of what we were doing before January of this year. But the answer to the question is we don't know if people who get vaccinated can transmit the virus because that was not something the study was designed to do. What we do know is that the vaccine is 95% efficacious in blocking disease, stopping disease. And at the end of the day, that's going to mean saving lives. And the bottom line for me is that's why this is so important, is saving lives. And that's what this vaccine is going to do.
Let's go to Tracy, who's calling from Denver, Colorado. Tracy, good morning.
Good morning. I actually have a two-part question. The first part of the question is, it sounds like Dr. Hildreth is talking about a return to standard door-to-door public health, back to health fairs where health educators are standing in front of people talking about how people need to be health efficacious themselves, also so that they have good health understanding. Yeah, I'm a former health educator who's now an adjunct. Sorry, sir. And it sounds like we're going back to that so that everyone can have a really good understanding about what we need to personally do for our own health. And number two, it also sounds like Harry, it sounds like you might be interested in having some type of specific study about the special circumstances about people who react differently to different vaccines. Or is that something that you guys might be interested in, especially about this vaccine? Is that something that might be interesting, or is it something that might, because like I said, all of this is new, and I know how many people are very, very what was the word that someone said? They're not willing to step up and get the vaccine right now at this moment.
Go ahead and respond, Dr. Hildreth.
Well, fortunately, there's a great number of national organizations that are focused on this. National Medical Association, American Medical Association, National Academy of Medicine, NIH, HHS. There's a national organization of Black churches, and all of them recognize how important it is that we address vaccine hesitancy. Because if we don't do that, then none of this will mean what we want it to mean, which is getting back to some form of normalcy. So I think I'm encouraged by the fact that health literacy around public health as it relates to infectious diseases has probably never been as strong as it is now in this country, because for the last 11 months, the focus of the nation, in fact, has been on a public health crisis. So I think the level of literacy and knowledge of public health has been elevated. The interest in it among students who are aspiring for careers going forward has been elevated. So all those things are very encouraging. But there are a number of studies underway and a number of programs underway all over the country, some of them national programs, to engage communities, to increase their health literacy, to increase their knowledge of how vaccines work. And my point is, people want, I call it agency. They want the power to make the decision on their own, especially people in minority communities. I totally agree with that. So our goal is, as health professionals, to make sure they have sufficient information about what vaccines are, how they work, what the possible risks are. And I honestly believe that in our communities, once people fully understand all of those things to protect themselves and their communities, they're going to make the decision to accept the vaccine. But it has to be their decision, which means that our responsibility is to get them into a place where they're comfortable making that decision. And that's what we're trying to do.
Let's go to Doyle, who's calling from Pleasant Lake, Indiana. Doyle, good morning.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. Dr. Hildreth, it's great to talk to you. You are really a smart guy. My question's kind of two-part. I have a master's degree in microbiology. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but some of this doesn't make sense to me. I read several stories, and one that comes to mind is a 30-year-old man who's been infected and hospitalized 3 times with COVID-19. It was active infection, had to be intubated, all that stuff. And then I read some articles where they found that people who had active infection, they would do antibody tests on them 60 to 90 days later and couldn't find antibody to COVID-19 in their blood. And to me, that just doesn't make sense to me. And if that's true, then I don't understand why a vaccine would work. If you can't find antibody to somebody that's been actively infected and sick, it doesn't make sense to me that this vaccine would work. And maybe I'm looking at it too simplistically. The second part of my question is, if you've got time, is Dr. Fauci back in July did a podcast with Columbia University, and he said that he thinks that a lot of these positive tests are false positives because they're running PCR. And instead of running them at 33 cycles, they're running them 45, 47 cycles. And of course, that's going to give you more positive results, but I think it's going to give you dead nucleotides that don't work, and they might be different coronavirus. So it's going to give you positives that may not be true for COVID-19. Anyway, thank you for taking my call.
So first, let me acknowledge that there are lots of reports of individuals who get infected or appear to get infected multiple times. And one of the things that's most disturbing to me is that in a couple of cases, the first time a person was infected, they were pretty asymptomatic or very mild disease. But the second time they became infected, they had to be hospitalized and treated in ICU and put on a ventilator. And that tells us a number of things. The first thing it tells us is that infection itself does not guarantee immunity to the virus. And so those individuals who think that they might want to purposely get infected so they can achieve immunity, that's probably not the wisest choice to make. So we do know that reinfection is possible. The other thing we know is that in some individuals, the antibody response to certain things can be very low compared to the general population. But it would be quite extraordinary to get exposed to something 3 times and not have antibodies to that virus or to that bacteria, whatever it might be. But we do know also that some of the antibody tests are not very good because they're picking up antigens from other viruses that are related to the virus at hand, the coronavirus. But that's not what you're describing a case in which there are no antibodies at all, and I just find that challenging to believe. But it is true that the way PCR works, polymerase chain reaction, is you have primers, they're called primers, that give you the ability to amplify a small amount of material into a larger amount of material. And every time you run a cycle, the amount of material doubles. So that by the time you get to 20 cycles or so, you've amplified the presence of a small amount of material by a millionfold or more. So clearly, if there's a teeny tiny amount of material from the virus there, and you let it go on from 30 cycles to 40 cycles, you've amplified that another several orders of magnitude, which gives you false positives. People need to understand that after the virus has been cleared, some of the nucleic acid genetic material of the virus can remain in our systems for multiple days in low amounts. And so if you run PCR and you run a high number of cycles, you get false positives. Yes, there's material present, but it does not mean that you're infected. It just means that you have some residual material from your infection. And so I think there's been a lot of that that people are seeing. And that's why it's very important to have a cutoff for the number of cycles to make sure we don't get false positives. But I cannot offer an explanation for why someone who got infected 3 times would not have antibodies. Although what you might argue is that the fact that they don't make antibodies is why they've gotten infected multiple times in the first place. So I think that person would be a great person to do an investigation on, just to confirm that the lack of immune response was responsible for them getting infected multiple times.
Well, we'd like to thank Dr. James Hildreth, who is the president of Meharry Medical College and a member of the FDA's Vaccine and Related Biological Products Advisory Committee, for coming on with us this morning and walking us through the COVID-19 vaccine approval process. Dr. Hildreth, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Coming up next, American Enterprise Institute's Gary Schmidt.
I ain't dealing with that. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Sabio made me pull out the dagger. You know what I mean? He made me go to Hildreth, Dr. Hildreth now. I tried to introduce him to everybody 6-7 months ago. I tried to introduce him. I made a Facebook post about him. I put up an article that he did regarding the COVID-19 coverage. The man's a brilliant man, a smart man, and he realizes the moment that we're in. And, you know, hopefully everybody can learn something from Science with Shawn today. Again, I am going to have this link in the chat. I am going to update that whole conversation, and things should go as smooth as possible. I'm looking in the chat to see if there's any lingering questions or anything that we actually can do to answer, you know, some basic questions. If not me, some of the people in the chat, because around here we teach scientific literacy and our people be on it. We be on it. See, Sabio, you don't want that work, bro. You don't want that work, Sabio. I brings it. I brings the result. I'm looking in the chat. I'm updating the link though. Boom, is in there. Yep, updated. There's some things that he did say though that we can actually go back and review, and if we want to research, we can. So I got 15 articles on tab because of Shawn. My bad, dog. Yeah, but I gave y'all 13. I gave y'all 13 sources on pseudo killers. I gave you 13 sources on pseudo killers. I gave you about 6 on the last episode. There's not really any in this one. In this video, it's not really any. It's just the 2 interview links in this one. So it's not much more information. Now, the FDA information that I provided everybody from the last episode is crucial because it was so many different studies and everything was a part of that 1210, you know, release. And it dealt specifically with efficacy, and one article specifically with reactions, and specifically with some things that people have questions about, like some adverse, not some adverse effects, but the adverse effects in the participants. And then I also gave y'all the actual journals that was published. So I think it's crucial that 92-page document that y'all have, you make use of that. You don't have to read everything because some of that stuff not gonna make sense to you. But what will make sense is the adverse effects. If there's a cause of death, what caused the death? Any allergic reactions, you know, all of these things that we need to make an informed decision around, like what, you know, stuff like that. We should be beyond what's in the vaccine, what is an mRNA vaccine, and we should be beyond that. We're like episode 7 now, and we started out building slowly toward this progression, just to keeping ourselves informed. And you know, I'm gonna start slowing the episodes down as we get further along in the studies, and then just try to hit it up, you know, maybe once or twice a week. I don't know, but I think we're well prepared. Everybody that actually has been watching these or viewed these, whether it's once or twice, I don't know how many times. I don't even know if anybody goes back and watches these. I don't even know if people really are engaged in what's being said. But out of these 7 episodes, we've really been trying to work on educating everybody. What up, Gideon? Man, we just went through 2 good Q&As with JAMA, because JAMA did one today, a Q&A today. And yesterday, Dr. Hildreth, the top African-American immunologist and biologist. Oh, if y'all don't believe he the top, I can show y'all he the top guy. I can show y'all he the top. Think I'm playing. Watch this. Watch this. Think I'm playing. Here you go. Most fascinating people. James E.K. Hildreth, PhD, M.D., President and CEO of Meharry Medical College, immunologist, HIV and infectious disease. Top, buddy. Top. If you turn on your TV local coverage, COVID-19 pandemic, you've seen Dr. Hildreth as member, blah, 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 blah. All right, so we know that he was responsible for receiving the $34 million from the Bloomberg philanthropists to increase the number of Black physicians nationwide and help medical students pay off student loan debt. Hildreth also been working with the Black Caucus in the White House to fight against systemic racism and build equity for the undeserved locally and nationally. This May, he testified before the House Ways and Means Committee on the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on communities of color, and highlighted the alarming healthcare disparities that have long plagued communities of color, and how that these disparities have been exacerbated since the spread of the virus. Now, got a little quote in there where he talk about, but you dig me? We praise dude around here. We praise dude around here. Vanderbilt students. He teaches. He's over Meharry Medical, but he has students at the University of Vanderbilt, which is a private school, one of the top schools in the country, semi-Ivy League style. Vanderbilt students are under his tutelage. It's like he running at two different schools. The dude get busy, yo. He get all the way busy. I'm listening to him for anybody else. But yeah, get in. So we let him, he ended the show for us. And we dealt with the JAMA interview first. And because Savio, was making jokes in the chat saying that we using the devil, you know what I'm saying? I came with Hildreth to end the conversation. And he dealt with a question and answer as well by himself. The other one was a couple people on the panel. But he dealt with things by himself. And I really think that if we want to get any further information that we can lean on him. We don't dismiss everybody else. We want to make sure that the science aligns properly. So we want to make sure that we are, the talking points are similar, but we're trusting. Some people have a problem with trusting white people about science. And you have to remember, as long as you know the method, we don't need to trust them. We don't trust them. We trust the method. We trust the science. Who it come from shouldn't matter to us, but we trust the science. The flu and COVID in regards to vaccines, well, the flu is seasonal. It's different type of flus. We've actually covered that before in some previous episodes or presentations that I've actually talked about. But off the top of my head, Ed, I appreciate you tuning in. I haven't seen you around before, so hopefully you'll subscribe to the channel and not only just get with us on the scientific tip, but also historically with West Africa and all the continent of Africa and all the cultural and traditional things that we actually teach on this channel. It's not just, about vaccines or COVID-19. I just been on the run as of late because I felt like it was important to sometimes review certain data with other people, share that information with other people, and let us do what we need to do. Now, the difference, the flu is seasonal. You got the swine flu, and then you might have other flus, bird flu and things of that nature. And the difference between that and COVID-19 vaccines is COVID-19 vaccine is an mRNA, messenger RNA vaccine, right? And the flu vaccines are, just your traditional dead strand style, but the flu's been mutating. They've been drifting. So it's a different type of a flu, and that's why they have seasons. So the science has to adjust accordingly to the drift, and they have to tackle it that way. As far as the mRNA, the messenger vaccine for SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19, it's new. This is something that your cells are involved in. It helps boost an immune response and create, a defense mechanism using the information from your body to help ward off this virus once it has encountered itself outside of that. Now, it requires 2 vaccines. The flu may only just be 1. The first vaccine, you'll get a particular dosage. The second one, you'll get a booster. That's really the only differences there. Now, the COVID-19, the COVID-19 vaccine, being that it's a novel, to us as far as being used technically, which was actually explained too, but being a new vaccine, it's doing things that they didn't think would happen, like have high efficacy rates. And whereas they were looking for 60%, they're getting 90% efficacy rates because people are taken to the actual vaccine, and we're just only receiving mild responses right now over the majority of the study, and it's safer. There's no dead strand in a vaccine, so there go your differences. So did y'all go over the first NYC nurse to take the vaccine? No, I didn't get into all of that, Gideon. I mean, that's common knowledge, maybe I should have, but I did not. That sister deserves some credit. She's been all over the media today. She was the first one. NYC nurses work. I knew they were going to be the first ones on there. I find it very disturbing that we have to video people receiving the vaccination to help influence people to relax over this stuff. That's crazy. I answered that earlier, Adsha. The flu is seasonal, and every year it drifts. So every year it's a different style of the flu. That's why they have seasons. We do not know if COVID, based on what we've seen over the year, when COVID came on the scene, COVID was mutating automatically. It was acting and behaving in a way that no other no other virus had acted before. The COVID-19 attacks way more than just your respiratory or certain parts of your body. It's attacking your whole body, from your brain to your eyes, to your toes, to your private parts, to your lungs, your heart, liver, kidneys, your other extremities. It's attacking all of that. We never seen this. And we can't say that it's been seasonal. You had some scientists say that it's a possibility that it could be seasonal, and they are trying to see if it's going to be if it's going to drift as well. So, what I would highly recommend though is I would highly recommend you reviewing some of the previous shows or anything related to that, because we do get into that. Also subscribe to the pseudo killers. And yeah, see, COVID messed up Scarface kidneys. Absolutely did. Sure did. And he was sitting there in that chair. He didn't want to sit nowhere else or move. And he talked about how it tore him apart. Really did. And now he need, new kidneys. Yep. And that's why T.I. and a few other rappers put up money for Scarface donors. They had to rearrange the way that it was being distributed to Scarface, so it'll be just like gifts to whoever stepped up for him. But yeah, they took care of that. Oh, okay. I see why Gideon he loved her speech. Let me see if I can find. Let me see if I can find her. I've been meaning to go to NPR for y'all, because if I go to NPR, there's some lectures that we could listen to and build with. But yeah, let me do this for the audience, and let me see if they're gonna give you any. That's right. In science, we trust. Now you get. I trust the science. Now, man, you know my hashtag, bro. In science, we trust. Don't play with me.
Support for NPR and the following message come from our sponsor, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Hit the play button to learn about the important role MEDC plays in forming partnerships and supporting businesses across the state, particularly in this last year.
All right, how great is it to get to read this next line? Today, the first vaccines against COVID-19 are being administered here in the U.S. Healthcare workers are at the front of the line. And among the very first this morning was Sandra Lindsay, a critical care nurse at Long Island Jewish Medical Center in New York. She got the shot in the company of dozens of her colleagues. Afterwards, Lindsay reflected on what it means to have protection against the deadly coronavirus, which has now killed 300,000 people in the U.S.
I'm hopeful, I'm excited, I feel relieved. I feel like we're coming to the end and we really need to put an end to this pandemic.
Fred Mogul from member station WNYC was at the hospital with Lindsay this morning. He's here now. Hi there, Fred.
Hi there.
Hi, what a scene. What was it like?
Well, it was pretty straightforward. Nurse Lindsay was sitting in a chair. A doctor got out the vaccine needle, stuck her arm, put on a Band-Aid. It was all over in a few seconds. Very brightly lit conference room, packed full of reporters. Lots of officials from the hospitals were there. Some of them took questions from the process. Probably not a banner day for social distancing, if I'm being quite honest. All of us packed in there, but it was over pretty quickly.
Yeah. And who exactly is she? Why do we know why she was chosen to go first?
Well, she is an African-American woman, as is the physician who vaccinated her, Dr. Michelle Schuster. This wasn't a coincidence. The organizers and Lindsay were very explicit. They're trying to send a message to people of color that they will have access to vaccines and that they should put aside any mistrust or skepticism they have and go out there, get shots as soon as they're available.
I believe in the science, and I want people who look like me, associate with me, to feel confident and comfortable in taking the vaccine.
I believe in the science. I want people who look like me, associate with me, to feel confident and comfortable in taking the vaccine.
Now, whether when it hits the general public, it will indeed reach all those vulnerable communities remains to be seen, because at the moment, of course, healthcare workers really are being given the priority.
Right. They are being given priority. There's not enough even for all of them in this very first round, even with millions of doses being shipped out. How are hospitals and other healthcare sites deciding who gets to go first among this very first batch?
Each hospital is probably a little bit different, but basically they're prioritizing the people who work in emergency rooms and intensive care units, as you might imagine, the people who are very closest to the patients. The hospital also says that not just doctors and nurses, of course, though, all the people on those floors, the maintenance workers, the transport people who move patients from place to place, and they'll also, all of these people will additionally be prioritized based on their own age, other risk factors they might have, such as hypertension or diabetes.
We have been doing all kinds of reporting on how tricky it is to transport this vaccine, to handle this vaccine. This Pfizer vaccine needs to be stored at really, really low temperatures, special freezers. Were there any hiccups that we know of today?
Not that they told us about. We asked. We were not surprised when they said it went super smoothly. They emphasized how really important it is just to have everyone lined up, ready to go. Because, not only these vials of vaccine, they just last a few days in these ultra-cool freezers, but they come as a powder and they get hydrated with saline solution. And once that happens, they only last 6 hours. So you really need to move people through. You need to have the ducks lined up. You could risk wasting doses, and that would be very, very expensive proposition. That being said, they do also have to move through somewhat slowly. The people giving the shots need to explain what the consequences could be, and they're held a little longer afterward than usual, about 15 minutes at least, to observe them to see if there are any side effects. We know that some of them are likely to have at least some side effects, but they should come and go very quickly.
Okay, and I'm told so far Sandra Lindsay does not have any side effects, so we wish her well. Thank you for your reporting, Fred.
So good to be with you.
Fred Mogul of member station WNYC.
So, yeah.
And now more from NP.
So, yeah, that was basically 4 minutes right there. And they directly quoted her, as did Gideon Block did in the chat. She believes in the science. She ain't tripping on what everybody else tripping on. She believes in the science. And I stand with her based on the research. Based on the freaking research. So yeah, man, we had a pretty good build today. We let the scientists do most of the talking. We looked up a couple of a couple of terms to get familiar with those terms that were used by the JAMA crew. Look for more episodes. I know my boy Chavis. My boy Chavis, he probably, when he get a hold of this stream, he's gonna be like, man, I passed out, crashed out, whatever he gonna do. But yeah, we dropped it for him. He wasn't expecting this either. So hopefully everybody, share the show with like-minded individuals. Get them informed, man. Let them know that, hey, look, man, we got people that's working to educate one another on the subject matter so that we can make informed decisions. I'm not convincing anybody to go get the vaccine. I'm getting it, but I'm not telling you to go get the vaccine. I am wholeheartedly only trying to give you the science, the data that you normally would not find on your own if you were interested in it or not, and make sure that you're abreast to it and aware of it. And this is why I do Science with Shawn, so that we can all learn together, build together, and then we can talk about certain things that we need to talk about. Now, if I may know a little bit more than you on a particular subject, I ain't no know-it-all. I got it from somewhere, so I'm gonna give you where I got it from, and we gonna just roll with it just like that, all the way down the pipe. Now, if people have questions, they can leave comments on the videos. They can hit up the posts that I do on Facebook. I've been drowning them. I've been trying not to drown my wall no more with those posts, because that's why I started doing Science with Shawn, so I didn't have to overload my Facebook wall with those posts. I can use that for history, some science, and then pretty much to advertise our merch store at which is also in the description, and our books. You know what I mean? So support us, support the Mossi Warrior Clan, support COVID Pieside Research Team, the Pseudo Killers, Armor Rock Squad, Dagger Squad, Voices of Fire, Magi Archers, SARS. I always mess up SARS stuff. Make sure y'all, Samo tip all day long. Get all his works. I mean, we're trying to work the links to the books in the description. Killmonger's Corner Volume 2. Get your journal. I got 2 articles in there that I wrote. I hope that y'all get this journal. And then when you get it, you read it. I need your feedback on what you on how you think I did on those 2 articles. Kofi's article, Ben's article, Asar's article, the interviews that's in there, the artwork by the sisters, the poetry by Sister Alima, all of that. Kimbo says, I know I wish my grandmother and great aunt could have had it. No cap. Facts. Facts, Kimbo. Believing in science doesn't make you religious either. It makes you forward thinking. Correct. Correct. Now you have to remember what you're believing in. Science is a tool. Science requires you to know and to do. So you're believing in something that requires you to know and to do. And what is it that you need to know? The method on how to solve the problem. You need to know the method. You need to understand what it's being used to do, resolve something in our natural world. And then to do is the demonstrating part, is the showing clarity that you understand the science so you're able to do what needs to be done to make sure that we are all on one page together with this information. I do have Brother Sutik. I don't know if he's still doing what he needed to do, handling some business, or if he had any questions, but I don't see any from the chat. Hold on, I got some in the inbox. Oh, okay. So basically, I'm not gonna say who sent it to me, but yeah, what you see there is basically some pseudo information. That labeling, the AstraZeneca labeling stuff. People have been using that video. It has been surfacing in inboxes all over social media, and it hasn't been posted on Facebook because Facebook is striking it, and people are going to Facebook jail behind it. It's very misleading and disturbing. So when you watch the video, she's reading some stuff she doesn't understand. And she's trying to horrify or make people scared of it based on what she's reading, but she really don't know what she's reading. And it's that ignorance that causes issues and problems. But that's my thought on that. Okay, so all right, there are no more questions in my messenger. Looking in the chat. Ain't nobody else got no questions? And Shawn, will vaccines be mandatory? I don't see a problem with a mandatory vaccine, but no. In the show that we had before, and even Dr. Hildreth, you remember Dr. Hildreth saying we're just trying to get people out in front, educating people so that people can make an informed decision on whether to vaccinate or not to vaccinate. Some people's employment may require that you do get vaccinated if they do return to a building, because you're going to be in a building among other people. And that's going to require, it's going to be tough to probably social distance. So knowing that everyone in the building has been vaccinated before they come into the building creates a safe working space and environment for everyone involved. So, your jobs could do that. But as of right now, there's nobody talking about mandatory vaccinations. They would rather you have all the information that you need to know up front in order to make an honest decision on whether you want to take the vaccine or not. That's why they've been so transparent for the last 9 months. They've been really, really, really transparent with the information. Good question, though. Anybody else with questions? Yeah, they ain't forcing nobody. And, you know, honestly, man, I would hope that all of y'all would want to take the vaccine. I mean, you know, not because I'm saying it, you know, because of the data that we have available to us. You know, I was speaking in terms of the data that's available to us. Based on the data that we have right now, we can make an informed decision. But guess what? We ain't got to make the decision today. They made it for us. They already made the decision for us because we got to wait dang near 6 months. We got to wait 6 months before we can even, you know, say, hey, let me get the vaccine. Right? So out the rip, we're going to have 6 months worth of data that we're going to be able to review and analyze and critique. And we're going to see how other people in the population is responding to this vaccine, because the people that were a part of the trials, if you've missed the other episodes, the people that are part of the trials are people that have to write in journals for the next 2 years about any symptoms or side effects that they are having on a day-to-day basis. And they are to contact their physicians or doctors immediately in order to also address anything like that. So we're going to have everything that we need to know before we even get it in. Now, Dave B, if you're for anybody in the chat that's unfamiliar with Dave B was actually contracted COVID-19, and he's talked about his experience with it, and you know, and he can tell you firsthand if he gonna get the vaccine or not. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Man, y'all, I couldn't be doing this good of a job, or them videos couldn't be doing that great of a job explaining stuff to y'all, because y'all are rocking out. For real, y'all ain't got nothing else? Let me check my messages real quick. I got some images I need to look at. Let me see what I can muster up. Sure, man, I ain't no teacher, bro. I'm a student. I'm always gonna be a student. People are spending the extra hour in bed since pandemic started. Yep. I've been lazy than a mug, man. I'm gonna have to get back on my regimen. I don't see anything that I need to talk to y'all about this transpiring. I know I ain't heard nothing about that Sputnik vaccine that the Russians got. Yeah, also, man, you know, they halted a vaccine in Australia. I don't know, I haven't read the article on it, but there's an article regarding it. So there was some stuff that they need to take care of. Mm-hmm. Johnson & Johnson reduced the number of people in their trials, saying they don't need 60, they just need 40, because COVID was spreading too far and wide. They went down to 40. As Shawn, do you think there's threat of vaccine contamination for Black community? Man, look, I'm gonna get to you, Adja, but first, Olakun, and Yemiya. No, there's no threat. The only threat is our ignorance. The only contamination is Sonetta TV. So I'm gonna repeat that. Nah, there's no threat of vaccine contamination. The only threat of vaccine contamination is Sonetta TV. The misinformation and the pseudo-isms that is pushed on the Black community is targeted by people that are ignorant. Those are the people that will make us suffer the most. Did the Russian doctors take their vaccines up front? Nah, Zane, we don't know nothing about that. All right, Adja, let me get to yours. It says, so is there a possibility that the flu has been evolving with humans for longer? This creates the constant changes in needs for yearly vaccines. Pathogens are millions and billions of billions and billions of years old, yo. And you have to think about the research study that goes into trying to understand these seasons, MERS, SARS, and you know, from that perspective. So I would advise, well, yeah, I'm going to say I'm going to say everything's mutating. Think about it this way. Why are they still monitoring the polio over here, right? When we did a good job of eradicating polio in America. See what I'm saying? MMR, the same thing. And what Keisha just said, nature's always trying to kill you. So yeah, all pathogens could be evolving in some sense. You know, it's always a constant change. So we have to adapt to it and adjust to certain things and move on. Yeah, you can, yep, pretty much. Misinformation is the biggest problem for Black people. Misinformation can kill us. And when you put up a panel of people addressing a topic that most of them aren't even qualified to speak on, not one qualified person was on that panel or be on those panels when they talk vaccines. And they all have a hidden agenda. Even a pediatrician guy that was on there. They're going to get Black people killed. Let's see. Any more questions? I ain't got no more, man. I'm gonna hop in the shower and crash out, and probably come back tomorrow and do some with some updated information. You never know. I might bring it. I might bring back a little history lesson or something. Cause I've been reading and researching, so I haven't really been sharing what I've been reading or researching for a reason. I'm just trying to, you know, I'm in my data collecting mode. They all want to follow and not peer review. Yes, absolutely. They do. They all do want to follow him. But wouldn't it be more non-biased if you had people up there who actually can hold a conversation with people from the opposite side of the argument and keep it engaging? You see what I'm saying? Like, our people want to be entertained by the spookism, like the fear mongering. You know what I'm saying? Like, you ain't got nobody up there that's really trying to educate the people. And then if you do a show with people that's trying to educate people on vaccines and things of that nature, they boring. We ain't getting enough views. Let me stop this whole thing and let me call somebody else so I can get some drama going. oh, this is too boring. Oh man, I can't take all this reading. Like you dumb people down with your ability to not comprehend. So you got low reading comprehension. You can't pay attention to anything long enough. You just, your comprehension is just low all the way around the board. If it's not drama or messy, you ain't entertained or involved in the activities. So we got to figure out a way to bring drama into educating people on vaccines. That Tales from the Hood. Yeah, man, it's crazy. If you live in Georgia, don't forget to vote. Early vote starts today. Great, yeah. Good news on that. Yep. The election will be done January. Absolutely. And you do, people, everybody want to exercise their right to vote. And Atcha, appreciate you saying that. Georgia's a big deal right now. The Republicans is up in the air. They mad. They pissed off. They think y'all done stole the election from them. Yep. Dave said, go get some sleep, y'all. Good night. Peace. Nah, Dave, I ain't ready yet, bro. I mean, I know I'm going to crash out, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to sleep, and then in a couple hours, I'm going to be right back up, bro. Like, it's weird. And then I'm going to toss and turn for a couple of hours, and then I'm going to, like, nap, and then I'm going to be right back up. Like, all I do is, peace, Kizzy. Kissu. All I do is I sleep weird. Like, I can stay up to like 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I'm going to get up at like 6 or 7. Then I'm going to start reading a book. And then after about 30 or 40 pages of reading the book, I'm going to get sleepy. And then I'll either doze off for 30 minutes, and then I'll be right back up thinking I got something to do. Oh, yeah. He said, no problem. I'm going to work this. That's right. You third shift. Yep, you third shifting it. You and I think it's a couple people that might be third shifting it. I know for the last few nights, though, some people needed to get up at 6 or 7 in the morning, and I've been keeping them up because they've been rocking out with me, man. So I apologize for everybody that I've been keeping up late. We've been getting it in. That's why I said I'm going to kind of like chill and try to do it like a couple times a week or something like that. So I'm off tomorrow anyway. And then I got a 3-day weekend again. So I'm going to try to relax this weekend a little bit. Zane, who to vote for? To be honest, bro, depending on your your political perspective. I'm not going to say vote Democrat because that wouldn't be smart. But that preacher dude, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to say vote for him. And I'm going to tell you why I'm saying vote for him. Based on the debate that they had, the lady, the Republican lady, she was taking pictures with the KKK, but also she was doing more. How can you stand on stage and attack a preacher who really ain't taking a certain position like other people that have come before him that ran for that same position? Like, this dude ain't even the type of person that you having all of these issues with politically. He has no political baggage that you could tie to. They try to say that, she tried to smear him and call him what's that word they always use when people want everybody to be on equal level? A socialist. She tried to smear him and call him a socialist. She tried to say that he tried to push something. They asked him about expanding the Supreme Court. How did he feel about that? Excuse me. That was craziness. I was like, that was a dumb. That shouldn't even matter. Man, I'm basically off the next 3 weekends, and then the third weekend pretty much is when my vacation starts. Man, look, I had 72. Well, how many hours? So that's 40, and then 36. I had 76, and then I took some other time off intentionally. I came in toward the end of the year with over 80 hours of overtime left. Coming into like November and December, I had like close to 80 hours. But that's what separates the real researchers from the literature. Yeah, true, Kimbo. It's facts. It's facts. But man, what I want people to do, man, is I want y'all to take everything away from me as you possibly can and share it with family members and friends, because we do have conversations in our own households where people are asking certain questions about vaccines and they're skeptic about vaccines and they don't know what to do. But if they're curious or the least bit curious, share these videos with them. And don't just share the videos with them and be like you're using a video as a source. Share the video with them and say, hey, look, I'm sharing this video with you, not because, you know, you can learn something from the video, but it's also going to provide you with literature review so that you can study these things on your own. Every episode has literature review. No matter what we do, we're going to be able to stand on the information. And if the information change or update, we're going to provide that change and that update so that everybody is on the same page. And I think that's what our people need to know. Like we're actually methodical in our approach on these episodes. Yeah, I can't carry over vacation either, so I'm running it down. I'm using it all up. Vote for a better pandemic response. That's true. Increased minimum wage. Yep, that's true. More access to health care, police reform, checks for people suffering from economic stress due to pandemic. Yeah, those are all some good reasons to vote. That's what you just basically said, actually. I don't know who you are. I don't know if we Facebook friends or whatever, but what you basically just said are things that really are generally for Black people, really, at the end of the day. So which candidate gives you the best chance to actually achieve those goals? That's the candidate that you want to put. If that's your agenda politically, if that's your agenda, that's who you want to vote for. That's your candidate. And now you got to hold your candidate responsible for helping achieve those goals, because people do need economic relief. All this year, I haven't been one of those people to like really push on certain aspects of things. But yeah, we do need economic relief. Like some of us are not financially where we were before this thing hit. And now you have jobs cracking down on people's pay and hours and limiting the accesses. So now we're having to us Black people are having to reshape our funds, and it looks like we are once again having as far as Black wealth goes in America, we're having to redefine Black wealth. Yeah, we see successful rappers and they get the little hot money right then and there, or athletes, they get the money right then and there. But overall, they're a small minority of Black people. Out of 45 million Black people, you know, it's only like 1,000 athletes and rappers and stuff that's getting money or something like that. I don't know the actual science behind it. But thank you, Infinity. But that's how I go. So we can't even close in on the wealth gap. And then you can't travel nowhere. So it's like you're using a vacation for what? To sit at home and sleep, research and read, watch TV, be lazy. Because if you want to go somewhere, you want to get on an airplane and fly out or something like that, you could be flying in a cold, red area. Your finances might not be where you need them to be to go travel somewhere. There's all kind of stuff going on right now. Relaxing is always cool. I would like to be in Florida at the end of this month, but that ain't possible. But yeah, man, I see we ain't got nothing else going on, so I ain't gonna hold nobody up. And I'm gonna do it like this right here. Ladies and gentlemen, the books is in. The books are in. Yep. They're in. They're here.